Former Governor Gary Johnson had a frustrating night on Tuesday as the Libertarian candidate for president garnered roughly 1% of the national popular vote. That makes his campaign the most successful Libertarian run in U.S. history, but Johnson says he hoped to prove to be a different voice in the election, one that garnered many more votes.
Gary Johnson, you are at the end of a very long journey, running for president twice, sort of, as a Republican, as a Libertarian. First of all, just wrap up your impressions of how the vote ended.
Well, Matt, I'm kind of disappointed. I just don't think that the vote is reflective of just how many people in this country believe themselves to be libertarian. I think people really bought into the fact that that your vote counted, that it was going to be so close that you had to vote for either Romney or Obama, as opposed to voting your conscience.
And there's also this idea of getting to the 5% threshold, which is can be a very close margin for a lot of people to get, whether it's the Libertarian Party onto the ballot as a major party, that sort of thing.
And so we didn't even come close to that. I mean, we didn't match what we minimally thought we were going to achieve, which was twice what it actually ended up being. I mean, I did get over 1 million votes. Ended up getting more votes as a Libertarian candidate for president than any Libertarian has ever gotten before. But really, the expectation was for a lot more.
Are we sort of married to this two-party system and really till death do us part?
Well, another thing to keep in mind is I spent $2 million on this campaign. They spent $2 billion on this campaign. So I got 1% of the vote, spending 1,000th of what they spent. So there's the plus sides of this. And then the things that I talked about, talking about marriage equality. Those were initiatives that passed in Maryland, and talking about legalizing marijuana. Those initiatives passed in Colorado and in Washington State.
Sure, you brought up some big issues. Those, and some of those are part of the social agenda that you talk about, being fiscally conservative, and yet socially you just want to let people do their thing unless it's impacting you.
Well, and so I think that the main reason that Romney lost is that he's not so good on dollars and cents. He's not as conservative as Republicans would like. And you know what? I think the Republican social agenda scares most Americans. That most Americans are not anti-immigrant, anti-gay, anti-women's rights, and Republicans have come to identify themselves in all those categories. A little bit scary, and they need to straighten up when it comes to those issues, and they're not straightening up. I'm back to libertarian philosophy, the general broad brushstroke of being fiscally responsible and socially accepting. I think that's where most people lie. I was prognosticating that either Obama or Romney are elected. We're going to find ourselves with a heightened police state. We're going to find ourselves in a continued state of war. We're going to continue to militarily intervene in other countries' affairs to the detriment of you and I as U.S. citizens because of all the enemies that this creates. In a drone strike, we take out many, many innocent civilians, and it results in animosity, hatred to the United States, not friendship. It works in the opposite direction. And then spending. Spending is absolutely unsustainable, that if it's not fixed, we're going to find ourselves in a monetary collapse when the dollars that we have don't buy a thing because of the accompanying inflation that is going to go along with what we're doing.
Let's start with the sequestration of the fiscal cliff, as it's being called. What's going to happen over the next couple of months, and what do you think should happen? Should we just ride it out and see, kind of a thing?
Well, I think it's nibbling at the edges, really, and they did pass this, so let's bring it about. It's not going to be the end of the world. The end of the world is going to be to continue to spend money as we're spending money. It's got a consequence. There is no free. And the bill is coming due, if not right now, for free.
As you look at this this idea of the politics of the whole thing, as you said, they did pass this. They said, okay, so this is what we're going to do to get our deal done, to raise the debt ceiling. We are going to have some responsibility built into this thing. And all of a sudden, it's the worst thing in the world, and you have both parties blaming the other one for doing this sort of thing that they agreed to. How do you cut through that kind of rhetoric?
Well, that you make it happen. Really, I'm advocating a 43% reduction in government spending. I think that unless we rein in spending, that the result will be horrible. The result is going to be horrible inflation to the point that government collapses. Russia experienced a monetary collapse. They were in Afghanistan for 10 years fighting a war that arguably bankrupted them. Any similarities? And they experienced a monetary collapse at the end of the 80s. In our lifetimes, they will never recover from that monetary collapse. We're on course to do the same thing.
Do we have an artificial sense of security because we print the money, because the dollar is the standard?
We do print the money, but the collapse is that when the interest that you owe on that money is so great, the collapse is because we continue to print money. The implications on what we buy are that everything that we buy goes up in price to the point that it goes up so much in price that you have hyperinflation, and then that ends up to be a collapse. The shelves are bare because money doesn't buy anything anymore.
Simpson Bowles also nibbling at the edges, do you feel?
Nibbling at the edges. Nibbling at the edges. A positive direction anyway, but nibbling at the edges. And this is all that we're talking about here with this budget compromise that was reached. Look, let's follow through with it.
How do you carry this conversation out over the next 4 years, either to hand over the reins to someone else or to run again yourself in 2016, although I know you don't want to even think about that right now.
I don't even think about it. But to continue to have a voice, and the voice would be a voice of reason. You can't continue down this fiscal path, and that the two of them, Romney, Obama, are arguing over who's going to spend more money on Medicare. I've been back to New Mexico often enough to see all the congressional ads that ran here, everybody running for Congress, everybody running for U.S. Senate, that I'm gonna keep your Medicare, I'm gonna maintain it. Well, it can't be maintained. Matt, it's a benefit that you and I put $30,000 into, and we receive a $100,000 benefit. Whatever we put into Medicare, we get back 3 times more than what we pay in. In no way, shape, or form is this anything that is sustainable. We've got to address this, and we can address this. We can provide a health care safety net for those that are over 65. Medicaid, we can provide a health care safety net for those that are poor. But it involves drawing new lines of eligibility that if we don't draw the new lines of eligibility, the alternative is no health care at all. A collapsed government that is incapable of delivering any services whatsoever. That's the alternative.
Would you do something like for Social Security, take the cap off if it's is it $110,000? Anything above that isn't taxed for Social Security. Would that be the kind of solution in addition to those eligibility changes you're talking about?
Well, by the way, so I was talking about Medicaid, Medicare.
Right.
Social Security is absolutely savable relative to Medicare.
Okay.
Social Security, very simply, it's a system that needs to take in more money than what it pays out. I'm advocating the fair tax, so no longer would Social Security be a deduction from your payroll check. It would come out of the proceeds of the fair tax. One federal consumption tax. I'm advocating throwing out the entire federal tax system. No more income tax, no more corporate tax, no more IRS. Replace all of it with one federal consumption tax. Really, the answer when it comes to jobs, when it comes to ends up being cost neutral, the answer to bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States because of a zero corporate tax rate environment. But all that said, what you point out with regard to Social Security is one of those. So we need to tweak Social Security, raise the retirement age, change the escalator built into Social Security from the wage index to the inflation rate. You could have a very fair means testing. and in the context of means testing. How much did you pay in? How much are you getting paid back out relative to the income that you have? Very fair. Talking about if you kept the current tax system in place, other ways to bring Social Security in making it actuarially sound into the future.
Would you rather see some of these changes come with the rise of a third-party option like the Libertarian Party, or do you think they would be more effective or more palatable if the Republican Party incorporated some of them?
Well, certainly if Democrats or Republicans were to actually address this issue, that would be a positive. But the reason that I am a libertarian, the reason that I ran as a third-party candidate, is they're not addressing these issues. They're not doing it. And I think the majority of us as Americans recognize that we're in deep trouble and that to get out of it, it's going to involve mutual sacrifice. But it's mutual sacrifice. And we're burying our heads in the sand over issues that we can't bury our heads in the sand in anymore. I mean, it's like, really, do we think the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy are coming to save the day? Apparently so, because that's what we're electing.
Gary, I always appreciate your time and your frank manner. I think a lot of people find it refreshing.
Well, thank you.
We talked a lot about money and politics this week. You can learn more about it by finding our state legislative campaign finance maps at newmexicopbs.org. And before we go, there's one correction we want to make on air. Last week, line panelist Dan Foley indicated the League of Women Voters endorses candidates as well as publishes a voting guide. The League does not make endorsements, and you can find Dan's apology for making that mistake at newmexicoinfocus.org. I'm Gene Grant. We'll see you next week in Focus.